Greetings. I'm pleased to participate in the American Alliance of Museums Advocacy Day to discuss the National Science Foundation and our programs that support museums. First, I want to applaud AAM for your great commitment to share the importance and the vast learning opportunities offered by museums. As a federal science agency, NSF knows well that learning in informal settings can be a spark that ignites a desire to learn about science and a gateway for many to pursue science and engineering careers. Thus, our shared goal is to ensure that people of all ages and in all areas of this nation are able to access and learn about the wonders of science. And although the past 2 years have been especially challenging, I'm grateful that you and so many museums are continuing to persevere and do this work during the COVID pandemic. As we all know and have experienced in one form or another, COVID has dominated our lives in unexpected ways over the past 2 years. It has impacted not only our health, but education from pre-K through 12 through higher education and into our workforce. In fact, it has exposed and exacerbated inequities that we know have long persisted and reminded us of the continuous hard work we must do to ensure the diversity in STEM and education. NSF has responded in a number of ways to address the impact of COVID, ranging from issuing an NSF-wide Dear Colleague letter calling for rapid proposals to explore how to model and understand the spread of COVID-19, to funding more than 80 startups to address COVID challenges. I'm pleased to say that this community has been responsive and often steps up when NSF has specific calls like these. And we are now in a moment where the findings from those projects are being shared broadly with the museum community and beyond. Clearly, understanding and addressing the devastating impact of COVID-19 will be vital to our nation's economic recovery, which aligns with one of the administration's key priorities. Since last year's Museum Advocacy Day, the administration has released the fiscal year 2022 budget request. It firmly supports NSF's mission to advance U.S. science and technology progress. That request includes $10.17 billion for NSF, which is an increase of 20% over the agency's current budget, and it includes $1.28 billion for the Education Directorate. This request aims to strengthen NSF's investments in fundamental research and education, which is necessary to lead the world in innovation. The administration's immediate priorities focus on racial equity, climate change, response to COVID-19, and the nation's economic recovery. More specifically, the administration aims to lead the world in innovation, to pursue racial equity in science, to combat global climate change and build a resilient future, and to strengthen U.S. leadership in critical challenges like artificial intelligence and quantum information science, all of which align with the mission of NSF. As you may know, NSF's mission is to promote the progress of science, to advance the national health, prosperity, and welfare, and to secure the national defense, and for other purposes. One of those other purposes is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, or STEM education. NSF's investment in STEM education dates back to the agency's authorizing language and has been reinforced over the past 70 years. In fact, to achieve the agency's mission, NSF's director, Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan, has outlined his vision, which focuses on 3 pillars. First, advancing the frontiers of research. Next, ensuring accessibility and inclusivity. And third, securing global leadership. All of NSF's directorates support this new vision, and we are aligning our individual missions toward this shared vision. Within the Directorate for Education and Human Resources, which supports STEM education and education research from pre-K through 12 to workforce development, we fund innovative teaching practices, instructional tools, and programs that advance STEM education and prepare the next generation of STEM professionals. Our work also emphasizes education and public engagement activities at all levels and in all settings, including museums and science centers, films, documentaries, and television series, science communication, and other activities and venues. Much of NSF's investments in informal science are funded through programs within EHR, or Education and Human Resources. I want to showcase a couple of the programs and how they support informal learning. For example, AISL. For more than 30 years, NSF's Advancing Informal Science Learning, or AISL program, has been an integral part of our portfolio. AISL, which was previously known as the Informal Science Education Program, contributes to the breadth of programming and innovation in the EHR portfolio, from a range of museums to cyber learning to makerspaces. Importantly, the work that takes place through the AISL program has led to advances in knowledge and in novel approaches to designing and developing STEM learning in informal environments. It has helped those in the field of STEM education better understand ways in which we can inspire learners of all ages to meaningfully engage with STEM. An example of one AISL funded project is one that focuses on understanding visitors' sense of belonging in science and natural history museums. While museums strive to be inclusive and welcoming as possible to all visitors, data from many institutions shows that audiences are still disproportionately white, well-educated, and more affluent than the average local population. One contributing factor to the lack of progress is that staff often create programs that work to create inclusivity from their own perspective, rather than grounding the work in a broader vision of the museum experience. This project will allow for deeper exploration of how visitors, particularly those from groups that visit less frequently, experience a museum visit, and how that sense of belonging is supported or eroded during their visit. Through intensive work at one museum and additional work at 3 others, the project will look for themes and insights that can help all museums create more positive environments that matter for all audiences. Next, I'd like to talk about ITEST, our Innovative Technology Experiences for Students and Teachers program, which supports innovative models to engage youth from preschool through 12th grade in technology-rich experiences that excite them about STEM and STEM careers, while also engaging teachers. ITEST projects may engage youth in school or out of school, or through a blend of learning environments. For example, for over a decade, the Science Research Mentoring Program, a STEM workforce development initiative of the American Museum of Natural History, has provided New York City high school students from underserved populations with the experience of working closely with scientists. In partnership with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the museum will create opportunities for high school students to learn and apply machine learning, a subset of artificial intelligence, to scientific problems in the natural sciences. Through this project, 120 students will participate in a 4-week summer institute specifically focused on developing skills and understanding machine learning applications and careers. And 30 of these students will subsequently work in research labs over the academic year with scientists who use machine learning. A design-based research approach will be used to develop and refine the Summer Institute, informed by a team consisting of science educators, scientists, artificial intelligence experts, and program alumni. Student participants will be recruited specifically from partner organizations that primarily serve diverse first-generation college-bound students. Research findings will be disseminated through conferences, articles, and social media. Along with these programs, there are other varied opportunities to support museums. For example, the career program includes funding in informal STEM spaces as well. And people from non-academic institutions are eligible to submit proposals. One career project focuses on how families learn through involvement. Recent studies have advocated for a shift toward educational practices that involve learners actively contributing to STEM as a shared and public endeavor, rather than limiting their involvement. In informal learning environments, families' social interactions are critical avenues for STEM learning, and science centers and museums have developed strategies for prompting families' sustained engagement and conversation at STEM exhibits. However, exhibits often guide visitors' exploration towards predetermined insights, which may constrain the ways that families can interact with STEM content, and also will neglect opportunities to tap into their prior knowledge. The research for this project will range from studying how families work together to negotiate and pursue their own learning goals, to what exhibit designs work best for the broadest audience. Education activities will involve ongoing collaborations between researchers, exhibit designers, educators, and facilitators. The group will use emerging findings from the research to guide the development of more inclusive learning experiences at STEM exhibits and a set of design principles for supporting families' learning. Now, I would like to show how informal learning projects also fit into the director's vision for NSF. For the first pillar that I mentioned, advancing the frontiers of research, NSF invests in projects that are future-oriented, that result from changes in technology, the nation's demography, the economy, and new directions in STEM. Several areas, which we refer to as industries of tomorrow, drive innovation, not only for basic science and engineering, but for our society moving into the future. They are cross-cutting, convergent, and interdependent fields of research that will collectively advance our STEM knowledge. And these fields are critical to the nation's long-term economic and national security. One of the industries of tomorrow in particular that I would like to point out is artificial intelligence, or AI. AI directly impacts the work of museums and science centers. AI has emerged as an important area of STEM, and it is important that all students have access to experiences in this field. In an ongoing project, the American Museum of Natural History has partnered with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology to create opportunities for high school students to learn and apply machine learning, which is a subset of AI, to scientific problems in the natural sciences. The project responds to the imperative to prepare a diverse student body for a workplace that will require a sophisticated understanding of artificial intelligence and machine learning. And the second pillar is ensuring accessibility and inclusivity. In addition to advancing the frontiers of research into the future, we know that we must develop a skilled workforce that is prepared to carry out and continue moving us forward in science and engineering. And that future workforce must focus on increasing the number of women and individuals from Hispanic, Black, Native and Pacific Island populations to ensure that the STEM workforce is reflective of the general population. Data from the National Center for Science and Engineering Statistics and from the National Science Board's Vision 2030 report predicts that close to 4 million additional people are needed in 2030 for the science and engineering workforce to be representative of the US population. The key to addressing this challenge is focusing on two issues that are unsolved in STEM education: disparities and persistent inequities. And at NSF, we're focusing on what changes to education are necessary to prepare students for the work of tomorrow. We know that museums and informal learning have a role to play. In an effort to address current complex problems such as changes in environmental conditions, systemic poverty, and societal responses to natural and man-made disasters, the Science Museum of Minnesota has embarked on a project that assembles individuals from different backgrounds within informal science institutions and local communities to bring new perspectives, identify new needs, and foster innovation for idea solutions. This venture, called IPAGE 2.0, has united over 27 informal science institutions to create agents of change within the informal science education sector. I want to highlight one other example that addresses equity. Zoos and Aquariums have been offering programming, events, and visits, accommodations to autistic individuals for several years. While these efforts can provide great experiences, they are focused more on accommodation and the outward-facing guest experience than inclusion. Lack of inclusion features in design, programming, and representation among zoo and aquarium representatives ultimately limits full inclusion and adds to a sense in autistic individuals of not belonging and not being welcome. To develop a fully exclusive experience for autistic individuals, a collaborative project from Oregon State University, Vanderbilt Kennedy Center's Treatment and Research Institute for Autism Spectrum Disorders, and the Association of Zoos and Aquariums is underway. This project seeks to provide inclusive experiences for autistic individuals at zoos and aquariums and will create strategies to ensure that autistic students feel included in learning and opportunities. To maximize the impact, the project will develop and expand a network of early adopters to build a community of practice around inclusive practices to develop fully inclusive zoo and aquarium experiences for all individuals. And before I wrap up, I wanted to leave you with an example of how NSF is leveraging our partnership with the Smithsonian to advance our mission. On March 12, 2020, NSF and the Smithsonian entered into a partnership to bring more science to the halls of the Smithsonian Natural Portrait Gallery. The most recent product from that partnership is an event planned for Women's History Month, which will include a conversation between historians focused on new approaches to representing women in science. The event is scheduled for Tuesday, March 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. That's Tuesday, March 22nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The conversation will examine recent approaches to representing women in the history of science through portraiture and biography. Specifically, it will explore the challenge of subverting established historical narratives and defining women's participation in the history of science. Additional topics include the role of collaboration in producing and consuming these histories, the use of new technologies and media platforms, and efforts to identify and engage specific audiences. Finally, if you're interested in these and other funding opportunities and you have not done so already, I would encourage you to visit the Center for Advancement of Informal Science Education, or CAISE. Visit the CAISE website, which is informalscience.org. It has a range of valuable resources to help you understand and apply for the AISL funding opportunity, including access to journal articles and grade literature, such as evaluation reports and videos of projects, and other resources for the informal STEM education field. CAISE's website and newsletter are one way to keep up to date with opportunities for funding throughout NSF or museums. Again, thank you for your work and the critical role of museums in STEM education and STEM research and education. You illuminate science for families, children, communities, and the public. Thank you.